Okay, now let's spend some time talking about the role of the thumb on the picking hand. Now, to me, this is a very personal approach that I've developed over a long time, and sometimes people will ask me if I ever studied classical guitar or studied formally, and the answer is no. I never studied classical guitar. My foundation for my right hand technique, but in particular the thumb, really comes from some of my fingerstyle jazz influences, but especially bass players. And by kind of incorporating all kinds of influences, both in watching bass players and guitar players of all different styles, classical, flamenco, fingerstyle jazz, and so on, thumb pickers, and assessing my own needs and what I wanted to hear out of the guitar, gradually over time I developed a few different, what I think of as kind of foundation principles that I'd like to share with you now in terms of what you can do with the thumb. So for me, the thumb serves a variety of purposes, and a few of those namely are muting, string dampening, shadowing, and actually articulating notes using different techniques that I call thumb drops, referencing the changes. We'll get into all of these. But the very first thing I want to talk about is just the actual posture of your picking hand. So for me, my right hand, it just comes naturally right into the guitar. So I don't have a flexed posture like a bass player or some classical guitarists. It's very, my hand and wrist and arm are all in alignment. They're all perfectly straight, and then that just drops right into the guitar. Almost like you could imagine like the arm of a record player, just kind of like, here's your needle and it's just dropping down to the record. That's the whole idea. And the biggest reason behind that idea is so that you're not compromising any of the nerves that pass through the wrist. And when that natural posture is compromised, anytime you do this or this, what's happening is all of the nerves that pass through your wrist are stretched and ultimately compromised if you do it long enough. So if I held a posture like this, you can see and feel, if you even do this, that your nerves are kind of being stretched. And doing too much of this for too long can result in problems such as carpal tunnel syndrome and inflammation. And that's what we want to avoid. So I just keep a nice straight posture and just drop it right into the body of the guitar. So now that I have this posture, you'll see that with all of our hands, the thumb is just kind of positioned over the lower strings, and the fingers are up here. Now, if I were to play a simple scale that we just worked through, we worked through in A major, but we have the same scale pattern now in G major. Here's the scale pattern, just to take a look and listen to it. So it's. Okay, that's probably a scale fingering that most of us have learned or know very well at this point. So I want to draw attention to the thumb here. And so what's happening, this is what I call a combination of thumb muting and thumb shadowing. So what that means is, if I'm plucking notes on the two bottom strings, and I'm just at this point working with IM, I'm going to play those notes. The thumb is just hanging out. It's not really doing anything at this point. But as soon as I play the notes on the next string, which is the A string, look at what happened. My thumb is now holding on to the low E string, and it's muting that string out. So for all three notes that I play on the A string, my thumb is dampening that or muting it. And so that's a technique that I call thumb muting. So the thumb is off for the low two notes. As soon as my fingers get up on the A string, my thumb is holding the E string down. So it's, now the thumb's on. When I move to the D string, look what happens. I'm still alternating between I and M, but now the thumb is resting gently on both the low E string and the A string. So this is what I call shadowing. The thumb is kind of like shadowing the fingers and following them. So wherever the fingers are, the thumb is just kind of right there, ready to mute out those other strings. So let me just play this scale again, ascending, and call attention to what the thumb is doing. So right now I'm playing the lowest two notes on the bottom E string, just with the fingers. Now I'm going to go up to the A string. My thumb is on the E string. Pivot up to the D string. Now my thumb is muting out the bottom two strings. I'm going to move up to the notes on the G string. Now my thumb just slides, just very subtly but effortlessly up, so it's like holding on to all of those strings below the G string, so the bottom three strings. Up to the B string, and then finally to the high E string. Now check out my thumb. The whole side of the thumb, basically from the tip down through the side, down to this joint, is holding or is just muting those strings. I'm not applying any pressure. It's very effortless, but it's just having contact with the strings. So it doesn't sound like this. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, but this is what you want to avoid. Okay, nobody wants to sound like that, but occasionally, sometimes I've had students, for example, that did study classical guitar, and they're very preoccupied with free stroke versus rest stroke. And so sometimes they're not even aware, if they're doing free strokes, for example, they're not even aware of all of this extraneous string noise that might be created. There might just be this kind of like overtone of a string that's ringing. We want to have control over all of those strings. So the way to play very cleanly, and this is especially important when you're playing solo guitar or duo with a singer, we want to be as clean as possible. And one way to do that is to use the thumb muting and thumb shadowing technique when we're playing chords, but especially single note lines. So I'm going to play that simple example again, very slowly, just so you can watch the thumb just kind of shadow the fingers and just latch onto that string. Now the thumb's on. Up to the next string. Up, up. And then I can descend down through the scale, and the thumb will just go the opposite way. So every time I'm going to a new string, the thumb just lifts off. And I can go up and down freely. Move it around cross strings, and the thumb, I think of it sometimes as like shadowing, but it's almost like a helicopter parent or something. It's just always on top of the index and middle fingers. But the point is that you're keeping everything clean, and it will sound just like you were playing with a pick or something. That's the level of acuity that you want, and you will be able to achieve that by incorporating this thumb muting and shadowing. So one last time, maybe let's bring up the metronome, and we'll play through this G major scale pattern together, nice and slow. And you can try, maybe watch my thumb a few times, and then try incorporating that same technique as you play along with the scale. And then on your own time, what you can do is, practice different scales, different triad arpeggio combinations, and of course, send me a video, let me know how you're doing, and you can ask me questions, and we can do a video exchange just on thumb muting and shadowing, because it's a very, critically important technique to playing fingerstyle jazz, I feel. So let's go ahead and pull up the metronome, and we'll explore thumb muting and shadowing. All right, so we're going to start off by playing nice and slow quarter notes. And again, observe my thumb, and then when you're ready to try, just jump in and try to do this together. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and. Thumbs on. Now 2 strings. It's all the way on. Now we're going to back off. Back off, and now we're off totally. Let's play the same thing with eighth notes, so you can see how it's the same exact technique, same movement, but just at a quicker tempo. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1.